Welcome to Bald Guy DIY. In this video, I'm going to answer the question of what to do when your bathroom circuits or outdoor receptacles stop working. Now, the Canadian Electrical Code specifies that if you're going to have a receptacle near a source of water, like your bathroom sink or kitchen sink or anywhere outdoors, that circuit and that receptacle need to be protected by a ground fault circuit interrupter. Now, what that does is it interrupts or shuts off the flow of electricity as soon as it senses that there is any current flowing to ground, because it shouldn't be flowing to ground. The ground is only there as a safety. Without a GFI, what's going to happen is when there's a fault to ground, it's going to allow the full amperage of that breaker protecting the circuit to flow before it shuts off, which means that if you were to grab something in a wet environment and get shocked or electrocuted, it's going to allow at least the breaker value of 15 amps or 20 amps to flow, and in many cases much more than that before it'll trip. Well, that amount of current is extremely lethal and could cause you to be dead long before the breaker trips. What a GFI does is sense a very small amount of current flowing, even as low as 10 milliamps, which will cause the receptacle or breaker to trip and prevent you from being injured. That amount of current isn't lethal, and so you will be protected. Think about throwing a hairdryer into a bathtub. As long as it's plugged into a GFI receptacle, pretty much as soon as it contacts water, the circuit's going to be shut off. It's a great device for safety, but it does nuisance trip sometimes depending on the load that you have connected to it. So it's possible to trip that little receptacle or breaker and not know that that's what you've done. I've been asked many times why an outdoor receptacle stopped working, or a bathroom receptacle, or even a circuit that's attached to one of those things, and it almost always comes down to the GFI mechanism being tripped. On a GFI breaker, you simply push the breaker lever all the way to the off position and then fully on, and it'll be reset. When it comes to the receptacles, there's a test and a reset button. If you press the reset button, you should feel a click, and you should see a power indicator which tells you that the receptacle is on. Keep in mind that some of them work oppositely, and they only turn the light on when the receptacle has tripped. But in any case, when you press the reset button, you should feel the click, and you should be able to tell that the circuit is working again. Now, if you were to plug in a load to that receptacle, it should function again. Now, this is a very common problem, and some people will say, hey, but one of my receptacles tripped, and it's not a GFI receptacle. What do I do about that? Well, GFI receptacles have an extra feature, which is that they're able to protect other devices connected to them. So if it's wired correctly, there's both a line inside and a load outside. On the load outside, what will happen is that whatever you connect to that will also be protected by the GFI. It's very common for contractors to save money by connecting additional receptacles to that first GFI, so they're all protected, but you don't know where it's tripped. That requires you to do a walk around your house, or look at the receptacles inside your bathroom and make sure that none of those are tripped, even if you don't expect that that's the problem. Often it is. One other place to look for a GFI receptacle is next to the electrical panel, because sometimes that's also what's used to protect other circuits on the outside of the house or somewhere else. Now, I don't recommend that practice. If you're going to install GFI receptacles, I prefer that all of the loads that are being controlled by it are close by, so it's very easily understood that that's what's the cause of the problem. I've had people walk around their house several times, not be able to find a GFI receptacle, and then find one hidden under the deck or some other place that actually has the GFI in it. Now, it's important to know that sometimes these GFI receptacles do fail, and they would need to be replaced. Most often, it's just a trip device, not a failed device. If you have a new home or installation, it's also possible that they didn't connect the GFI receptacle properly, in which case when you push that test and reset button, you don't hear a click and the power doesn't come onto that receptacle. Usually that means that the incoming power has been brought to the load side and not to the line side of the receptacle. So that's one other thing to check. Basically, to summarize, if you have an outdoor receptacle or bathroom receptacle or circuit that's not working, the first thing to check is if your GFI receptacle is tripped, press the reset button, and get the whole thing working again. If you're installing a receptacle or replacing one anywhere near a source of water, make sure to check the electrical code for your area and verify how close a receptacle to water needs to be in order for it to be GFI protected. Of course, make sure that the circuits are de-energized before you replace or install a GFI receptacle, and be safe out there. I hope that helps somebody out there, and it's a question that I run into time and time again, so it'll help someone, I'm sure. If you like the videos we're making, please consider subscribing to the channel, ring the bell to be notified of future videos as I make a new one every week, and tell your friends and family about it so that they can learn from the projects as well. If you have a question that you'd like answered in a future video, please leave it in the comments below, or leave us a comment of a project you'd like to see us tackle next. Until next time, in all your DIY projects and your thirst for knowledge, don't be afraid to be balder.